Sure. Okay, I'll start sharing. Thanks, Kola. Hi, all. Good morning, good evening. Let me start sharing. Okay. Yeah. So, last class that we had last week, right? It was last week. So, what we have learned is on file handling, right? So, mostly like how do we operate a file and different types of ways you can access a file and edit a file. Access meaning
Pankaj,
it's
can you go on present mode?
is it okay.
Slideshow, and in the slideshow, you can go as a present mode.
Uh,
Slideshow in the top.
Not here, right?
Under animations, we have slideshow, right?
Oh, here. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and you have
Oh,
present, yeah.
in
Slides in that, yeah, yes.
slideshow, it will have the entire
Uh,
thing.
oh, you can like play from current slide, yeah. Then,
Okay, yeah, it will go into the max mode.
yes, it will
Okay,
come big screen, yeah. Thank you.
sure. Yeah, I'll be jumping off anyway. Yeah, but thanks, Kul. Yeah, continuing, right? So how we can access a file and edit a file? Basically, the first one we've seen is the open, right? So where it's a basic native method. So the default is always read. And what happens when you access the file in write mode? It basically creates a file if it doesn't exist, or if it's already existing, it overwrites the file. Right, that's what we have seen. It overrides even if there is any content in the file. Immediately, it will overwrites the file. And one disadvantage of open is you always have to close the object. So whatever the object you're accessing, so you need to close the object, right? And that's the one we have seen. And also we have seen the basics on the OS module, like to see whether the file exists or not in a particular path, and deleting the file, and also remove directory, right? So those three we have seen: RMDIR and OS import OS. OS is the module, and os.remove will remove the file. And if you want to delete a directory, you have to do what? Remove directory. So that is the one. And today we'll learn about with open, right? So I've given a brief on what is the contrast in between two. With open, basically, what are the bigger advantages with open, right? So with open meaning, if you are in that block, so the file will still be open. Basically, the file connection object will still be active. So whenever within the program, if that with open block is done, that file connection object will be killed. So the connection from the while the program is executing, and the object, the connection object it has with that file, right, remote file or local file, it gets killed, or it becomes obsolete once the execution comes out of the with open block. So that's the bigger advantage. And what is the bigger advantage if somebody asks you, right, open and with open? So with open, you need not deliberately give close statement. So usually when what we have seen is where was it? So this is the file, right? So we have seen in the command prompt, right? So if you're trying to access a file and close a file, what we had to do is we were giving file object, right? This is how I created the object. So we are giving file object dot close. Let me maximize it. So what we had to give file object dot close. If you're not giving file object dot close, there are two things that were happening if you remember it. So one thing is it doesn't close the file, right? It doesn't close the file, meaning it doesn't save also. It doesn't save the data whatever you're giving. So we have seen, right, while writing a file, unless we give the object dot close, it doesn't even save the data that you're writing to the file. In the same case, appending whatever the data you're appending. So these are kind of disadvantages if you just use the open method while accessing a file. And why right? So any comment that we need to give in the Python code, you could just use the hash key or the pound key. So that will be considered as a state, like a remark or a statement. It's a commented line in the program. It can be anywhere within it. So those are the disadvantages. Just a recap, right? So open, what are the open? I'll put it here itself. Let's see. We need to close it. Did I give it? Yeah. Must close it. So, and another disadvantage, right? So suppose you're executing a program, right? Once there is an error within your program, right? So you had to control, basically you have to exit the execution. Like say the bad execution is like you have to reboot your machine, or else what is the other way you terminate a process? You just go to the task manager or find the, if it's a Linux, what is a Linux command to find out any existing processes. ts minus f is what it gives the all the executing processes on a Linux system. There is something called grep, something like search, right? So there is something called grep within the program. If you want to look for something, okay, Python, so Python 3 is running. So if you execute this command on any Linux system, it will give all the processes that are running by Python. So all your programs will be like what, command line executions in Linux, right? So that's how it is. So if you're running on Windows, you know it, you just go to the task manager and you kill the process, right? You could just kill any open window, so that's easy. But Linux, it's always different. There is no UI, right? It's always command line interface. So something good to learn. So this is for the Linux, just for your info. You could, after this class, you could just go over and search like how do you find the running process, how do you kill a process. So what this command gives you is just as a make it interesting, right? Let's not stick to it. So this command, as I was saying, what it gives you, it gives you all the processes that are running by Python. So if you have to kill the process, what is the command? Kill 9, you give the process ID. So this command will show you all the processes with the process ID. And once you pick the process ID that you have to kill, you have to issue kill-9 process ID. So it will kill the running process. Similarly, in Windows, as known, you just go to the task manager, you kill the running process, and then you again reboot Python, or else you can re-execute it. While that is happening, what has happened if you just used open, you accessed a file and your program got crashed, say something errored out. That what happens is it will still retain the connection for that file. It doesn't close it automatically. So that is one disadvantage with it. Not just deliberately you have to use call close, and also if any program issue happens, if any error gets created, the connection doesn't get lost. It still retains. You have to kill everything, terminate everything, and then the connection will be removed to that object, to that file. So that is one bigger disadvantage while using open. But for a simple read write, you could always use it. It's not a thing. Okay, so this is, that is the one, and with open we'll see it. And also how do we function definitions, we'll read about learn about function definitions and return types. And in one of the session I mentioned, right, there are like if you, the arguments can be optional also. We'll try to cover all those concepts within this class or else the next class. Okay, to function definitions, right? Before going to with open, let's see. So what have we written the last time is this, right? Okay, I can leave this, right? These are comments. So, okay, what we have seen yesterday, the last class is we just have a Python program. So here I've imported OS module. So here I'm trying to see if the file name text.txt exists or not. So why did we put it under if else, if you remember? So if I try to issue this command directly, so what happens if the file doesn't exist? It's gonna throw me an error like file doesn't exist. It won't blindly execute it. So if the file exists, it deletes it. So then it's a success. If the file doesn't exist, what it does, it throws me an error. So as to avoid it, so what we did, we are looking for the file if it exists or not. If the given file exists, then only execute the remove statement. This is just an print, which is an informative statement. And then if it doesn't exist, it goes into the else block, and we are saying alert provided file doesn't exist. Okay, so here I have a code, but this is completely what? It's a hard coded code, right? Because the file name is given as a static value. I cannot change it basically while runtime, or else if someone has to run it, they cannot change it. They have to get into this program, which is what is my program? File function, right? They have, anyone has to get into it and then change this file name that is being passed here. So what happens here? We are making the code static, and also we are hard coding the value. These are not the proper ways of programming, not Pythonic way, or even not a proper way, not a programming etiquette. So always you have to make it dynamic, right? So none of the most majorly we have to always focus, like we are not hard coding the data, we are not hard coding anything. So majorly that should be our part. And also if you see here, I'm repeating file, I had to repeat this file name at multiple places, right? One, two, or else here also it's three places I had to repeat it. So if I have to rename the file, change the file name, I had to change it at three places, right? Which is not always a good. Even if you just, okay boss, I don't want to execute this program multiple times, it is just I establish a remote connection to some RDP, which is Linux or Windows, I try to delete it's not a biggie. Like say you are running a cleanup job, you're automating or developing utility to clean up some files, so you don't need to bother. But still it's not a good practice because it's hard coded and it is being repeated, right? So as to make it dynamic, right, there comes something called dynamic, as in if you want to use this block of code repetitively. Okay, and there goes another example. What if I have to delete filename.txt and also, like say, filename 1.txt? So what would be the normal sense that comes to us initially, right, when we learn programming or anything? Okay, let's repeat it, let's copy paste it. So then I need to just do filename.to filename up to here. Okay, I'm good. But this is not the right way. Because why is this not a right way? You are repeating the lines of code where you could make it generic, right? So how do we make it generic? There comes the existence of functional libraries. I brought up that topic few times, right? So in interview questions, have you defined any functional library and all? People will definitely ask, even if you go for automation interview or any programming. Basically, if you say as a lead programmer or any senior assistant or anything. So this is just a basic, right? So we have to understand the roots or else the basics of it. So once you learn the basics, you can apply it anywhere. So what is the cause? That's why I'm trying to explain. So what is the need of functional libraries? This is one of the need. There could be many things in between, in the background. There are many good advantages of doing something good, right? But the best one would be this. You would reduce the lines of code that you write. Okay, say it is like 5 lines of code. One would think, okay, it's just 5 lines of code. But you, in the real time, if you're working for a client or a project, you would be handling multiple Python modules or programs, and it will have like 300, 500 lines of code, say averaging 100 lines of code. So if you had to repeat everything, so you are unnecessarily increasing the lines of code in the program, and also you are increasing the execution time of it. And what else are you trying to do? And you are making the code redundant. You have to repeat, do the same thing again and again. So to avoid all this, so say there is something called functional libraries, right? And how to make it dynamic, right? So how do I do it? So I have this part of code, right? So whenever you're trying to do, right, you're working on your pilot project or anything, first what you have to think is, how are you doing it? Take just like the unit tests, right? Yeah, like say how you develop chunks of code, and then you assembly, you can combine the code. And then what is the system testing? It's like involving multiple systems. So like say right now, these are all very important basics. So like say, I'll come back to it. Let me complete this one so that I'll try to cover it later. Okay, so now what is my goal now? I have to make it dynamic. I have to create a function out of this. I have the majority of the logic. Only thing I have to do is I have to make this value as dynamic, and user can call something and pass the file name that user wants. That file name has to be read everywhere here and executed, right? That's the one we have. Let's see how we can do it. Like say in the functional definition, like say def, like say, what do we say? Our sample function. And you end it with the colon. I'm not giving anything in the parents meaning. Right now at this point, it's not accepting any values. Let's just consider this way. So our 4 spaces, right? Everything has to be within this, right? So if I want this to execute, if I'm calling sample function, if I want all the lines under it to execute it, Python treats it as with the 4 spaces indentation. So anything that is under this with the 4 spaces, it will cover it. So if is passed, it executes this, else it is there, else it is there, and then it comes out of it. Like say, okay. So let's say, how do I call it? Let's say, I'll delete this part also, right? Let us try to see. Okay, so let me just execute this guy first. How do we? Okay, so I've executed, right? This is the command line execution. So I just call this program or module, the Python script module I have. So what happened now? It just printed something, line next to definition. Where is it? It is here. Okay, but it didn't execute anything, right? This is my function definition. One of my function I just created. It didn't execute it. You have to understand why it didn't execute, because I didn't call it. It just looks for the in any kind of errors, like say, okay, let me put it right this way. So this is an indentation error, right? Let me see if I get any indentation error or not. I got the indentation error. See? So initially what happens when this block of code, when this functional definition is all good in terms of syntax, it did nothing. It passed on to the execution of print line. So I deliberately put on some error here. So what happens here if you try to read it? Okay, I just executed it. There is an error on line 8. Alert provided. So here it what it's saying, expected an indented block after else statement on line 7. After the else, it needs an indentation block. Else it cannot execute it because I have stated else part. So we are fixing it. We run it. You have to understand few things here. So though we are not calling it, if you are running this program or module, it looks for all syntax errors, even though you're not deliberately calling it, and it will throw out that error. It doesn't execute it until it is fixed. I'll bring up this topic again when we are working with multiple modules. So, but that is important. So if you're importing this module into another module, right? Another program. So then if you're importing it just by importing in the first statement, right? Like say here we have import OS. So suppose I'm importing, there is my second file function. So suppose, which is a Python module somewhere. Say, okay. So I just said as SS file. I just gave an alias. Let's see what happens now. We have to, as I said before, right? We always have to try to break it and to understand what is causing the issues. So now what it said, no module named second file function. So when I gave this, right, it looks, OS is like within the Python, right? So OS is already, it's a built-in module. So it doesn't need to look for a physical file. It's already there. That file is already there in the Python installation under lib directory. You can find out once you have installed Python, you can go into the directory where it's installed. You'll find multiple packages within it. It should be there somewhere. So that's why it didn't look for the file. But when I gave this, so what basically Python does is it look for any Python module within here, within the directory I'm running. So it didn't find anything here. So let's say, let me put something. So let's create it. Okay. Okay. So what is inside this? I don't want all this, right? Let's say this is a line under the second file function. Like say, just close this. I didn't do anything, right? So we're going the back way. Let's say, okay, we need to understand this output, and also it sounds simple, but these are all the very core basics that need to understand once we get in depth, right? So most of the projects that we work on, we will be importing multiple modules which are like functional libraries and within it. So you have to understand it, and you might be touching some one module and it might break up. You won't be able to understand it. So these are all like very important core things. So now what happened? First, what we did, I just tried to import something. I don't know what it is. So then what I was just, though I was not using FF anywhere, right? Like so this second find function I wasn't using anywhere, but still, as the input has to work without any issues at first for the Python program to run, it has to look for all the packages that it needs. OS is like system package, it's there, and this is a user defined package. So if it doesn't there, even though you don't call it anywhere, even though you don't call it anywhere, it will still break your function. It will still break your execution. So that's another point that takes us to another point. If you are not using any module, don't import it. Always comment it. So this is one thing. So that way, so one way is you're not causing unnecessary issues, and also you are not causing the program to compile everything that is there. Because if you're not using this, why do you need to import it? Don't import it. It will cause some delay to the execution. It will cause unnecessary issues, right? That is one way. So while it does spend some microseconds or nanoseconds while trying to do it. So let's not do it. So that's not a Pythonic way. Import only the modules or the functional libraries that you need. Don't import everything. So we learned few things here, right? Just by the import itself. So these are all very important and basic. It makes your life easy once you progress into the expert state, the next levels of programming, not just Python, right? Anywhere you go, this is like fundamentals of programming. I'm trying to put it in very simple terms so that we absorb it quickly. We need to understand, right? OS. So now, okay, so what it did, if I created a program, I just put some lines. So though I don't call it, while it tries to compile this, whatever is there executable, it did it. Let's say uncomment this, and this is my right second line function. Do I have it open? No, I don't have it open. And uh, let's say, I don't know, let me see if this works. I'm just giving pass, right? Yeah, okay. It didn't print anything because I've commented that line. and I just gave pass. Instead of making it blank, I just gave one statement. So pass is like placeholder for it. So suppose I don't want to print anything else here, right? But I want to print else. I want to have else. What I can give pass without anything. So what it does is it's like a placeholder for it. You're saving some spot for it, or you're trying not to get any errors while execution, but you still want to maintain it. It's a placeholder. Consider it it helps in many ways. Placeholder. So later I could just print it. I could just change it to anything, or else I can just leave it as a pass. Okay. So we have something which is running. So how do I call this? So just give the function name and give in the parents. So right now, earlier we have seen we have executed it, didn't do anything. We fixed all the errors. It went to the last statement, line next to the definition. And now what we are calling, we are trying to call this function. So how do we call it? Just give the function name and parents, open and close. We are not passing any value yet. We'll do it in the next stage. We'll do step by step. So now let's see. And we don't need to close it by colon. Let's see if I run it, what happens. Okay, it tried to execute it. Let's again go by line by line. This is fine, which is expected. And now what it did next, it is trying to call the sample function. Okay, here it is. We already defined the sample function. And now what happens? The sample function, once it's called, it goes to the next line of execution within the block, functional block. It has it. Do I have a file name.txt? I don't think I have it. Let's validate it. I don't have any file name.txt here. So it went to the else block and it printed what? File not found error. It's not an error. It's like a user message. File not found. We're not posting errors here, right? It's a user message. What we're alerting user. Okay. What we did, instead of repeating this, we tried to do something, but still my value is hard coded. We are going step by step, as again I said. So let's see. So how do I make it to accept a dynamic value? Meaning I don't want to any functional definition, right? It has to remain static unless you're refactoring the code. Once the functional definition is defined, none of the users or developers has to go and edit it unless they refactor the code. For execution, your functional definition has to be very, very much dynamic. Nothing has to be hard coded in it. Then only it's called a functional library or a collection of functions, functional libraries. It has to be most dynamic. None of the values has to be hard coded. So how do we avoid it? This is my file name. Let's say this is my file name. So how do I do it? Like say, let's read the file name from user, right? Basically, how do I get the file name? I need to read it from the user. So let's say file name, or maybe just make it fn file name. So this will be my argument. How do I pass it? So instead of just putting everything in the codes and all, I don't want to do it, right? I want to make it dynamic. So what is that we want to look for? File name. Okay. And what is that we want to remove? File name. Okay. And again, this message, it is again the file name. Okay. So whatever is read here while execution, it will be passed on to the following lines and it will be executed. Let's see how it is. So right now, I don't want to change the sample function, right? Let's see what happens. Okay, let's see. It is expected to throw me an error, right? Missing one required positional argument file name. how is it reading? So it comes here, it goes back here, and then it is giving me a type error. It is clearly stating, see what is the positional required document file name, where it is getting from here. Okay, so what I need to pass file name. What is my file name? Like say .csv. Okay, let's say let's not delete it at first. Let's see what it does. So what we're trying to give is, instead of the file name in the quotes here, why we have to give it? Because it's a string. But here we are not reading it anything, right? We're just treating it as an argument. So let's see what happens. See, currently there is no error. This is again user given message. We're giving for the user alert file not found. Why the file not found? Because it doesn't. Let's see. Let's fix the file name also. And I want this part to be executed. Or let's say we'll execute for twice. So earlier what we are saying, if I want to delete multiple files, we had to copy the code, which is making the code redundant. Is it the same copy too? Okay. So what I expect now to happen is, I expect it to delete copy.csv and copy2.csv. Let's see. Okay. By the message I see it is success. Line next to definition, it is there, and delete file sample copy.csv, deleted file sample copy2.csv. Let's see if they're deleted. They are deleted. This is sample copy2.py. The sample CSVs are gone. Similar way, if you see now, so what we repeated, we just repeated one line, which is the call, functional call. We have changed it, and we have achieved a like say maybe 100%. We can say it. Yeah, it's 100% because I don't need to change this block of code, right? Anytime you want me to delete it, any file, you just call my function. You just provide the file value. You just delete it. Like say, so we made it simpler, right? And we made it neater, and we've also made what, our code very simple and with less number of lines of code, right? Instead of like 10 lines or 15 lines of code, we just have it, and we are trying to execute it simply. If you don't want it, so we can just comment it, right? We can always do the pound. Okay. So this is how you can create a function. So instead of creating a function, whenever you, instead of starting with a line one, right? Whenever you got some work assigned, so you have to understand it by bits, piece by piece. First think through like how you would do it manually. Well, not, it's not applicable to majority of the things, but few of the things, like say where you have to physically access a file, something like that. But it's not like, not applicable to everything manually, but you have to imagine, okay, you have to open a file. So what is the method to open a file? You could just or else deleting a file here, right? You could just delete os.remove, start with this line. So if I were you, I would start with this line, and then I would try to see with the wrong file name and the not file name. Then I know, okay, I have to, instead of directly executing remove, I need to first find whether that exists or not. So instead of making it exist, I need os module, still the same module which we used for remove. I'll look for it, and then I'll come up with this. Then now, first I will start with hard coding it itself, right? I don't need to make it arbitrary or dynamic at first. I'm still developing the code. So you do this, and then you make it a function. Still keep it hard coded only, because you might need to edit it multiple times. And then we have it. So, and also will learn about the need of unit tests, and how do we create unit tests, and how do we run it. But currently I've tested my code completely. So this part I've tested everything. I've seen if the file exists, what happens. I've tried to make sure like all the lines of code I've executed, I've seen it's error free. Okay, this is again, we have achieved most of it. Like say, this is not, but this is still not my driver. I have put everything under one program, one module, right? If any of you remembered, I mentioned this topic called driver script. Mostly, most of the people call it driver script. So it need not be named driver, but it's your start point of the program. So even if there are like I worked in some few banking projects, right, where the Python once it kicks off, it runs for 3 hours, 4 hours. This Python replaced like 3,000, 10,000 lines of PLSQL code, and they have fragmented it into multiple 7 modules, and all the modules they've built in Python with the help of ETL again. So extract transform load, right? So anywhere you go you'll listen ETL process. Like Informatica is very old tool. Right now there is something called Astra, and there are many tools that does the ETL job. And Python always, like Python is always what? Data. You need to have some data, you need to process some data. Where is the data? In the few traditional projects you'll have some Informatica process running, developing, generating the data. You read the data, you process some business functions within Python, and then you generate another CSV file or a flat file, and then again that ETL will takes it up and loads up a view, right? View is yeah, table view. Try to understand, try to dig into, if you have to be knowing something on the database end, right? We need not be experts on everything, but we need to understand. If somebody says, okay, are you aware of any database, have you worked on anything, do you have hands on? Yeah, you should. It's always good to say yes. And instead of the joins and all, the left join, right join, instead of asking anybody, all try to rank it and all. So majorly, if what you have to understand is, so table view, try to see what is a table, what is a view. So table would have like, I have a process, as I just said, right? I have a process that runs every day for 30 days. Like say, so this itself will have like 5 million rows of record, 5 million rows of data. So which is huge, right? So I might just retain 30 days. So this 30 days of data, I would retain or save it on a table, right? Because it's history data. Try to understand this part. It's always interesting to learn all, right? Okay, I have a process that runs every day, and by the logic, I need to just restore 30 days of data. Okay, that is fine. But when the business works on it, they don't need all 30 days of data. Like say today is 30th exactly, which is a good example. So what business wants to run, if they started the day today, which is Jan 30th in the morning, they would be looking up what 29th data, right? So whatever the data that is available by the before day run, that is the latest data. Business don't want to do, unless there is an issue, they mostly don't want anything. They don't work on the data that is generated within these days, but still we have to retain 30 days of data for some troubleshooting. So what stores all the 30 days of data? It's a table. Table has all the data. So there should be some differentiations, right? So if I'm saying by run ID, every day the run ID is dynamic associated by some process. It will, you can just search by a run ID. You'll have by the entire days of data, entire data for a particular day. Okay, but what is the difference here? If I give access to the business users, right? Like say business users somewhere, I'll say business users. If they want to work on a data, what is the latest data? Jan 29th. If I'm giving them the table, what does the table has? Table has 30 days of data, meaning 150 million rows of data, right? It's each day has 5 million rows. It's that many million rows of data, 150 million rows of data, right? So now then what is the performance of it? If they're running any join, any kind of query that they're running it, or some concatenation or a summation or anything they're running, it takes time. They might just use run id which is related to Jan 29th, but still there will be lot of lag while executing the query. Or they just don't want to run id, because again, why they don't want to use run id in some of their cases, because they might just have some code which just runs dynamically, meaning run id is a hard coded value, right? So run id for Jan 29th could be 0129, run id for Jan 20th is 0128. So I don't want to change it every time. So again, some good example of why do you need to avoid hard coding the code anywhere, not just in Python, your SQL statement, or you have a simple Excel macro, you're doing it. Okay. And table is there and it is causing issues to the business users. So then what comes here? View. Very high level of DB, right? Table and view. What is the need for a view? So view, what view does is it always holds the latest data, latest run data. So what it gives the advantage to the business? Business can just execute the dynamic queries without run ID on the view instead of a table. They don't need to bother, because by the theory, by the definition, view always holds the latest run data. So here by today, Jan 30th morning, what is the latest run? Jan 20th. So this view has the latest run data, which is Jan 29th, and business is happy to use it. So something so to learn, right? Not just Python. So there are many concepts that you can learn. Just not to bore you with all the Python stuff, right? So something, yeah. Try to, with this input, try to learn. You get into, when you have time, try to understand the table view. And this is the practical example. When do you need a view? When do you need a table? You might not find it. Yeah. And this is a real-time example. So how is it? So whenever the table, so this view runs on a table, it populates it, or else there could be a process. It always extracts the latest data from the table, it populates the view. So view always live data or the real-time latest data. So you always execute the view. And okay, if they want to troubleshoot something by the days, they will always have access to the table, right? It's gonna do it. But this is rare, one time scenario or couple of times in a day. But this is all throughout the day. Throughout the day, business users will be accessing the view. So here, that is one way, right? There are three things. So we are making it dynamic by avoiding the use of run id, just like here the file name. So they don't want to do it. So here this is my generic code kind of functional library, one example. Okay, so still again, I'll just leave this as is, right? It's all my commented part, I don't want it. Still there is something missing here. Okay, driver, right? That's when I started all this drama. Driver. So this cannot be my driver, because with even within this simple example, I have put my function library here, I'm calling it here, everywhere I'm doing it. So this is not something I want. So how do I do it? So let's leave it as is. Let's delete this. I think I can just leave it. I don't, this is all commented, right? I'll just leave. I'll just delete it. Otherwise, what is there? You guys already made a note, right? Okay. So end line. Let's say end line next to definition. Or I don't want anything. My functional library has to be clean, right? I don't want to import anything that I don't want. We need to stick to the practice. Okay. So this is my functional library. Let's just run it. It does nothing. See, it has no errors. It does nothing. It doesn't execute anything. So it's plain. So I want to call this now. So we need to import, just like we imported like second file function. Let us try to do it. Let's rename it as what? My driver. Okay, so I don't want this. So this driver, what I want to run it, I want to do the same what we did before. We need to call this sample function. So how do I do it? I need to import, what is this module name? It is file functions, right? Yes, let's give an alias instead of calling the entire thing, right? Let's say file F or something. Okay, so let's leave it. And now I want to do it like say simply put, okay, this is my alias. How do I call it? Same way dot, what is this function name? Sample function, right? Of what I need to give, I need to provide the file name, sample space copy dot CSV. Okay, let's see what happens. I'll again repeat what we did. Okay, so it executed without any issues. File not found. If the file is there, it would delete it. Let's also do it. What is the problem? File is not there. Deleted file sample space copy.csv. It is deleted. Okay, so this is the way how you define or create a driver script. So this driver script is clean basically from all the function definitions, right? I want to put the function definitions in a different module, a functional library. Though it's a Python module, I consider it as a functional library because I don't have any repetitive code here, right? That we expend multiple times by now. And now I want a code that is changing. I want to put it in a script which is always changing, or I have to edit it and run it. I don't want to touch this file because this is my functional library. Even though I open it, I might not edit it, but there could be some typographical errors introduced or something, anything could happen. Imagine there are like 30 function definitions here. Anything could happen, but we always want to avoid editing the files. So how to do it? We can create a driver script. So this is your script. Similarly, this is one function that you are importing, one functional library that you are importing. The time comes, there will be like 10 to 20 import statements here once you go into the next levels, right? And how are we doing it? This is how we're doing it. We import it, the required module we import it. And why are we calling with the dot operator? Because this function, earlier what we did, we just use function, right? Sample underscore function, because it was in the same module here. We were executing it here, but we are no more executing it there. We are executing a different module. If I just give sample function, it doesn't understand. Let's see, I expect an error. Let's see. See, sample function is not defined. If I don't provide the dot operator, what is a Python? By default, it looks for the sample function definition here. There has to be a definition here. It doesn't there. That's why it is giving me an error. So how do I tell Python, okay, boss, don't look within here, look into the imported module. You give the dot operator. And now it will look into file functions, and then it will try to see if this function exists, and then it will execute it. Rest all will remain the same. I'll just give it a minute. Maybe just try to understand what all we have covered so far. Or you can take a note even, that's fine. Because this is always important, right? Even if you get into the class objects and all, like oops concepts, when we get into it, this is all basic. We're covering few topics of it, right? We're covering functions, we're covering arguments, And next we will see one example of covering the optional or default arguments as well. Before that, we'll just cover with open, right? I just don't want to continue the same topic. You might get bored. That's why I brought in functions here. Okay. Yeah. Enough of recap, right? So we've learned everything here. So let's see. Let's go back to with open. I'll close this. I'll close this. I'll create something. So we'll cover this again. So there is no return type, right? Okay, yeah, return type. So what am I returning? I'm not returning anything, right? So here, my return type is none here. I don't return anything here. Am I returning anything here? If you see, no. I'm just executing something, and once it is executing, I'm not passing. I'm not sending anything back other than the execution. The cursor of execution has now passed from this line to back to the driver script. So my driver script has nothing in it, right? After I call this function, it has nothing in it. So it ends. So my function ended, my program ended. If I want to do the same, we could try to delete the another file, or else you could call another function and do your other job as well. But right now we don't we're not returning anything. So what is the return type for this function? There is nothing. We are not returning anything for this function. We'll learn about further functions where we return something and then that we use it for the next function calls or within the program. Else we can try it here itself. That's fine. Let's say flag. Let's say I just want to put a flag, false, boolean, right? True, false. Let's say here it is true, meaning it's success, right? Basically, let's return flag. Okay. I'll explain again. Well, let me run it. So what, okay, maybe I'll just cover it now. So, okay, I just defined one boolean, false. I don't need to put it in quotes. It's true, false. Keyword, right? False is nothing but one, right? It's an error. So I don't want to proceed. Okay, flag. So if it able to delete it, it's a success, meaning my success has to be true, which is right. If it the else, I didn't do anything because I have already defined it as false only. By default, I made it a false. So it doesn't come here, then it values it still holds as true. If it doesn't go into if, it value still holds as false. So I'm trying to return flag. So this is the return value of it. Let me run the driver again. Okay, it did go to file not found. Where is my driver? Okay. So what I'm trying to, instead of catching it or saving it to another variable, I'm just trying to do a print, right? Print, we know it's kind of whatever is the return value, it tries to print it. So what it's doing, file not found, it is giving me false. The same way, instead of this, I could just give X, right? Okay. Same way, instead of false, right? So why do you need to have a return value? It could be as simple as this, right? So here we're trying to use the return value to continue with our execution. You could call your next program. It's not just delete file. We're not creating multiple programs, but within the existing program, we try to understand the logic and what is the need of it. So here it is same way. And if it's deleted, obviously what happens, it becomes true and it will just go to the flow. You could go into the next flow. You could have multiple lines of code here. That is one way in the return. Understanding the return. We'll learn more about these functions again once it comes to the oops, right? Okay. And now I'll close this. We'll continue with what? With open, right? Those are many advantages when compared with open. We'll see with open once now. Okay. We don't want anything, right? I don't think we need anything. So what is our file here? Let's say we have a sample CSV, right? Let me see what I just exported something from internet, so it has some data in it. Okay, so this is my comma separated value file. So let me just delete this line. Okay, this is my header and this is the 5 rows of data that I have here, right? So let's say we try to access the file. So open was like you define an object and then equal to open of the file name, right? So with open is similar to it, but it's like just by the name it says like with open of what is my file name, sample.csv. So instead of here we define the object here like the file object, similar way which we did last time, file object, and again it's a block of statements. Okay, so let's say file object, right? Let's see what is that file object. Print of type of, always try to understand what is the type of the file object. Let's see. Maybe let's just run this, right? Let's run this. It's a class of text input output wrapper. Okay. And now I want to understand, I just want to print. Okay, so what is happening here? I didn't give any mode here, right? By default, what it happens, it always takes it as a read mode. So we have read, write, append, and what else we can do? Earlier it was just accepting only read, write, append, right? So here with open we can do something called r plus also. R plus, it won't accept rw, but it accepts r plus, meaning it's like read plus write. It does that. And there is something called binary mode also. People might ask you what is the binary RB, right? It's binary modes RB and WB, I believe. So basically, when do we need to edit a file or anything in binary mode is if it's binary objects, meaning if those files are images or videos or it's audio file, right? So those files you cannot just do RWA or anything. It has to be binary, RB or WB. Then accordingly, you have to input the data. We don't use much unless we are into this particular projects, right, where you have to deal with images and videos or audio. So currently, most of the majority of the projects are outside of it. So we rarely use RBW binary mode. These are the different modes. And again, in detail on what is a binary mode, when do you need to use it. But mostly we'll always deal with flat files, right? So this is it. So here I didn't give anything, right? I didn't give any mode. By default, it takes it as a read mode. And now I have an object here. And let me see. I just need to print one line out of that object. So how do I print? I always need to access the object. It's a dot operator again. And then let's say read line. And now I need to print X. Let me just print type of X, right? So we always have to understand what we are dealing with, and then you could always play around with it, right? Okay. Okay. So this is my output. So this is my I'm trying to find out what is the object. Let's comment it for further execution. I don't want this. I know what it is. We are trying to read one of the line. I just mentioned read line. I've saved it in X variable, and I'm trying to get the type of the variable, what is X, and then I'm trying to print it. So what is X is a string. So what is the value that is saying it passed me over when I executed read line? It is supposed to give me the first line. What is the first line in this CSV, which we always call it as the header of a CSV. This is the header of the CSV, right? The first line is always the header in a CSV. If it's the flat files always don't necessarily need to have a header. So they'll have the data in one of the file, like say if it's a flat file, right? They will have the data in one of the file, and the header they will call it as a config or something, and they will save the header info just in something like that. I'll show you how they'll save it. So but CSV, it always treats the first row as the header. So this is the header. So what it gave me, the first line, read line, when I'm trying to execute read line here, it just gave me the first line. I saved it, I printed it. Okay. What if I did want to read all the lines within it? Let's say read lines, simple, right? Plural. In the earlier it was read line, and now it is read lines. I didn't change anything. I still want to read what X is, what is the type of it, and I want to print it. Let's execute it. Okay. So now what is my X now? With the read lines, it is returning. What is it returning? It is returning a list. But one advantage of good thing in Python, right? I just gave X. I didn't define X to be a list, right? It's arbitrary depending on the execution. Earlier X was a string, and now X has become a list. So normally you would have to define something, right? You would have to define the variable, like define the data type for that variable. It has to be a string if it's catching a return value string. If it's a list or a data structure, anything, it has to be of that data type. But here it's not needed. Python doesn't need it. You don't need to define it. That's one good thing. So it's my read lines. It is giving me list. We know good about list, right? It is a list. So now that's why if you see, it is printing like this way. it is printing lists. The entire list is being printed. This is the entire data within the CSV. Okay, so that is one thing, and there is some. We'll again process it again line by line, and few other methods. Okay, I'll just instead of just overriding it. So first is read line, and the next is read lines, which is give everything. We'll again learn on how to just get a specified line, right? Something like that. I think it should also give me read line of 100 or something, but that is kind of a byte size of it. I'm just trying to remember how it goes in. Let me see what happens here. If I give read line of 100, right? If it's working or not. Yeah, it is working. So here what happens is, okay, read line accepts the value by default. It just gives the first line. It accepts an int value also. But here 100, right? How it considers is it tries to return you the value which is like up until 100 bytes. That's by theory. But what is happening? We don't know what 100 bytes is, right? But what is happening if you give the minimum, right? 100, it gave me what? Just the first row header. If I give 1, it still gives me the first row header. It didn't give me anything. Oh, that's nice. Let me just give 10 maybe. Oh, it's for the read line. It is giving me my first characters, which is good. So here it gave until number of employees, right? Yeah, you could explore more on it, but that's kind of different. We don't use it much. All we use it with the read line if you just want to get the first line of it and then read lines. So now play around. We can play around with the read lines also. So right now read lines is what? It's a list, right? So what if I want to do? So there are multiple ways how you can get particular number of lines within this, right? Using with open. See, this is a vast. There are multiple techniques where you can use it. Not as simple as the open, right? So here, whenever this last line executes it, meaning it ends the execution. I'm not deliberately giving dot close, right? We don't need to give file update dot close, which is good thing. And also, if my program is abruptly ending or if it's failing, it immediately loses the connection to the file object, which is this file. So which is a good thing, right? We don't want to block the file or hold the file even though you're not running anything. It immediately kills the session. So now let me see. Again, we'll see. There is few ways. As this is a list, right? As let's say I just want to type in few rows, right? As it's a list, I could just give x of 3, or maybe let's see. Okay, let's run this first. We'll again see. Okay, so instead of getting all the lines, we just got like this is the first line, which is the header, and this is the second line, right? How did we just get the lines? This is one way you could do it because it's a return type is a list, right? So you could just specify this is slicing that we have learned before. This is one way. Just after the read lines, you just give it in the square brackets how many lines you want. If you just want like the first two lines, you could give 1 and 3. or we need not complicate it, but this is something which people might ask. So here it has skipped the what? It has skipped the header, right? I just wanted a one and two. So it printed the first two lines. Not first two lines, yeah. Excluding header, header comes the zeroth, right? 0, 1, 2. Here it's printed 1 and 2. So this is one way. It seems little complicated, but if we want to simplify it, so how do we do it? We could bring this back. So which gives me the list. Let me see. If I just give, I can do the slicing within the list, right? I can do the same thing. Let's see. We are expecting similar output as the before one. See, this output and this output is same. This one and this one is the same output. It's a simpler way. This sounds little complicated, and this one is simple because we know how to operate on list, right? We have learned in detail on slicing of the list. That's why I'm trying to print the type. What is the return value? It's a list. If it's a list, think of the same way, right? Listed could be the same way. So we have learned like this, right? So something like this. So this is a list, right? So this is the zeroth element, first element, and second element. Same way, this zeroth element, it has become a header. My first element has become the first row, and the second element has become the second row, and so on. The same way. It's a smaller list, it's a bigger list. That's it. That's the only difference. Nothing much. You operate the same way. When we learn with the smaller examples, and then again, gradually it progresses, right? That's how it is. Just a quick recap. We have read line, which gives me the first line. We have read lines, which returns all the lines in that file, whatever we're handling, in a list format, as a list basically. And you can play around with the list. If you just want to print the first line, you could just go with x of 0. And if you just want to, what if I just want to print everything in a meaningful way? Or else there is also another way to do it, right? I'll just comment it. I'm commenting everything, and then let's say, how do we do it? Again, let's say read lines. Let me just try to loop through it. Let's see what happens now. I'll explain once it runs. Yeah. Okay. See, now what is happening is we have a meaningful or cleanest way it is printing, right? Earlier it was printing with the new line characters and all escape characters and all. But right now what is happening? It is removing everything and it's printing in a different way, as a cleaner way. So how it is doing it? Let's go back. Same way I'm reading all the lines. I'm saving it in the variable X. So what is my X string? I'm just trying to print, right? It has multiple lines in it. So all slash and characters are new lines, right? So this is how we can do it. So you can just iterate through each line, and we are trying to delete all the extra spaces. Strip, what does strip does? It remove any additional spaces in a given line, right? In a given line or any string basically. So that's how it is doing. And now it clearly printed this message. If you see, it is all much cleaner. Okay, and what if I wanted to write something to it? Okay, where is one line? This is one line, right? Okay, let's see. I'll just end within the 5 minutes. I just wanted to cover the right part also, which we did with open, right? Like say I just copied this last line. And how do I do it? Where is my function? Okay, so we don't want to do anything, right? So what is my file object? File underscore object dot write, same method that we had before, right? And here within the quotes, I'm trying to put this, like say new line. Let me run this. I just copied, right? I printed all the lines. I picked up one line. Instead of typing everything, I'm trying to see what happens now. Once I execute it, oh, it is not writable. So why is it not writable? Because I didn't give any mode here. By default, what happens? It's a read mode. So now let's see, instead of write mode, if I give write mode, what it does? It overrides it. I don't want that to happen. So I can just give append. Instead, I have all write functions, methods here. I'll just give r plus. R plus makes it read and write. Okay, it did something, but it's not showing anything because there is nothing to print. Let us see. Let me close it. Close this. Did it get updated at first? Yeah, 747, right? It got updated a bit. Let's see in Excel. Okay, we'll see why it happens because we didn't give the new line, which I wanted to explain intentionally. Okay, so what happened? It had some data, right? So I just gave write line. I didn't specify slash and the new line character. So what it did is it just continue adding to the last line. So we're not telling it deliberately to add it a new line. We're just trying to write it, right? But it doesn't understand where to write it. So it picked up the last point of the cursor and it tried to added it. So if you see 1990 should have been this year, I believe. And then it added, this is our part, right? If you see here, this is our part. And it added this one. So let's remove this part. If you're not specifying new line character, it's gonna do that. So that is important to know. If you're trying to add a data, always try to have a similar small set of code, small set of file, do all the R&D with it, and then proceed with the bigger file so that you are not messing up any existing data, even if it's dev data or testing data or anything. So I have something here. Why did it right there? That's fine. Let's close it. And how do we avoid all that? Just give a slash n new line character. Um, let's see if this runs fine now. This is good. Let's see if it runs faster in the numbers. Okay. So it added fine, right? If you see now, just because of the I'm adding it in the new line, it added it as a new line. Cleanly it did it. I don't need to give header because header is already defined. If I just want to skip few values, you could just give it within the comma instead of I don't want a New Guinea, right? Just leave it as blank within the commas. It gets added. If you don't want the last value, just end it with a comma and don't give any value. You could try it out as an exercise. Create your own Excel. If you're not able to create your own Excel, you could, or in order to save time, you could just go on the internet, download a sample Excel by number of rows, you play around with it. So yeah, smart way, right? We don't want to, because whatever is the data in the file, we don't want to spend time creating that. You just download it from the internet, which is easier way. So yes, that's with it. That's with the with open. So see, this is again, it looks classic, right? It looks neat instead of open. It has multiple methods also. So what we have seen is read line. The first one, read lines give everything. There are multiple ways you could just print the lines within it. You could just iterate through it, or else if you just read everything as a string. So here it was string, right? No, this one is not a string. Read lines is coming as a list. So I was iterating through the list. Line here is one of the element within the list. I'm trying to print everything and I'm stripping the spaces so that it looks clean. And at the last we saw how to write data to it. And here it's a multiple mode, basically R plus, right? And I'm just trying to read it and also write it. Anything other than R plus is read and write. Okay, I guess these are the topics I wanted to cover today. Oh yeah, we had command line arguments, but this will be a bigger topic. And this is also again very important topic. Command line execution, right? I've given examples of why we need command line execution, and also not every execution will be as simple as this, right? As I'm doing it, it could be like I might need to pass runtime arguments or runtime parameters, right, while executing this program. I would just give something like minus hyphen a, give some value, hyphen b, give some value, hyphen c, give some value. So this is what happens in the real-time projects. You won't be just, even though it's a driver script, it will still need some inputs. And also, even I want to make these inputs very dynamic. I can just runtime arguments, something called runtime arguments. Very important topic, and there are two ways you could do it. Like say using sys, very basic, just like the open and with open, we have something called sys, sys argv, which will be very simple, but argparse is little complex, and also which is a structured way. It has multiple things. Sys doesn't have that flexibility. Argparse is complex, but it's flexible. This is the widely used way in command line arguments, right? Command line execution is very important. None of the programs, you don't call it any other. Wherever Python is used, mostly they'll use command line execution only. That's when, because multiple technologies will be involved in a project, right? They always need command line execution. That's one importance within CI/CD. So this maybe we'll cover it in the next topic. Just these two things, two ways of passing command line arguments, which is very, very important. Just like we've learned about functions and importance of functional libraries, how do you call a function, how do you import a function, and what is the return type, is where we saw a return type at the very high level, but we'll see in detail once it comes to the complex programming. But yeah, this is the best of it, basically. Yeah, even if you go through, most of the topics are I've tried to cover, because this is basics and also roots and very important topics. Yeah, I think I'm good for today, Kola.
Hey, yeah, Sampath. Thank you, thank you. So it's really, very nice and slow explanation today. Everyone, so let us know if you guys have any questions, post in the chat group, or maybe you can ask in the next class. So I will be sharing the recorded session to everyone. Just wait for maybe 1 or 2 days. So we'll be documenting in the same document, and then we'll send you the updated work. And I know it's too late in India, sorry, in the US and India as well. Yeah, so make sure you join tomorrow onwards. We have 2 hours class, Friday night here and Saturday morning for India. 2 hours, very, very good concepts on GenAI. And even Saturday, we are showing very good concepts using few POCs on machine learning and one POC on REAZ. And Sunday, we have a big workshop. Okay. As usual, Sunday, we conduct workshops. So, yeah, try to use the next 6 hours, effectively. And yeah, if better you attend the live session so that you feel and you learn instantly. Okay. If you couldn't attend at any for any reason, feel free to reach us, me or maybe our team. So we'll try to give you the recorded sessions. Okay. So with that, we are starting the G2 workshop for the 15 people. G1 is going on now, 15 people. G2, whoever is interested to take up proof of concepts and projects. So we are starting in next maybe Tuesday or Wednesday onwards. Please enroll and join with us. And G3 we start in the March first week, so that takes little time. And I started and I'm getting the enrolling spots for group 3 proof of concept assignment. Yeah, shortly I will announce and I will talk with each and everyone. So yeah, classes mostly we will give free, but when it comes to workshops, feel free to come up for the enrollment fee. And if you have any issues or financial assistance, please feel free to reach me, ending with 6312 number. I will try to help you everyone. Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Sampath.
Sure. Thanks, Kula. Thanks, team. Bye.
Bye.